Was I wrong to cut off my family after they chose my betrayer? I'm 34 years old now, sitting in my home office in Portland, watching rain streak down the window while my 2-year-old daughter Emma plays with blocks in the next room. My wife Chloe is making lunch, and I can hear her humming something off-key but cheerful. This is my life now, peaceful, stable, safe. But it wasn't always this way. This story begins when I was 26, living in Seattle, thinking I had my whole life mapped out like some kind of naive idiot who believed the universe rewarded good intentions and loyalty. Back then, I'd been with my girlfriend Maya for 8 years. 8 years. That's nearly a third of my life at that point. We met sophomore year of high school chemistry class, ironically enough, given how toxic our relationship would eventually become. We sat at adjacent lab tables in Mr. Henderson's second period class, and she kept borrowing my pencils and never returning them. I pretended to be annoyed, but really I was just looking for excuses to talk to her. She had this laugh that sounded like wind chimes, and dark hair she always wore in a messy bun with 2 pencils stuck through my pencils usually. By junior year, we were inseparable. By senior year, we were making plans for after graduation. We both went to the University of Washington, got an apartment together after freshman year, talked about marriage like it was an inevitability rather than a question. Maya became woven into the fabric of my life so completely that I couldn't imagine existence without her. She knew my family's quirks, how my dad always burned the Thanksgiving turkey, but refused to admit it. How my mom collected porcelain figurines of cats despite being allergic to actual cats. How my older brother Derek had a temper that everyone tiptoed around. She attended every holiday dinner, helped my mom in the kitchen while I watched football with my dad and Derek, knew which bedroom had been mine growing up, had her own toothbrush in my parents' guest bathroom. I truly believe she was the person I'd grow old with. I'd already bought a ring, nothing fancy, but I'd saved for 6 months to afford it. I was planning to propose that summer during a camping trip we'd been planning to the Olympic Peninsula. What I didn't know what nobody bothered to tell me, what everyone conspired to hide from me, was that for 3 of those 8 years, she was sleeping with my older brother Derek, and my entire family knew. Let me be clear about something. This wasn't a one-time drunken mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a sustained, calculated, ongoing betrayal that lasted longer than some marriages. 3 years. 1,095 days of lying to my face. Of family dinners where they all knew and I didn't. Of holidays where everyone smiled and passed the mashed potatoes while sitting on this nuclear secret. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when my world detonated. I remember the date, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I'd gone to work that morning at the architectural firm where I was a junior designer, spent the morning working on renderings for a commercial project, and developed a splitting migraine around noon. The kind that makes light feel like knives in your eyes and sounds like hammers on your skull. My boss took one look at me and told me to go home. I stopped by the pharmacy for some stronger painkillers, then decided to swing by my parents' house in the suburbs to grab some old photo albums. Maya and I were working on a project making a scrapbook of our relationship for our 8th anniversary, which was coming up in 2 weeks. I wanted pictures from high school, from holidays, from all those years we'd spent intertwined with my family. The irony is almost funny now. Almost. My parents lived in the same house I'd grown up in, a split level in a quiet neighborhood called Maple Ridge, where everyone knew everyone, and people still left their doors unlocked during the day. My dad had lived there since he was a kid. It was my grandfather's house originally. 3 bedrooms upstairs, living room and kitchen on the main floor, finished basement where Derek and I used to play video games and fight over the TV remote. I pulled into the driveway around 1 in the afternoon. My mom's car was there, but my dad's wasn't. He was probably at work. He managed a hardware store downtown. Derek's truck was parked on the street, which wasn't unusual. He'd moved back in with our parents 6 months earlier after losing his job as a construction supervisor. Another thing the family made excuses for. Derek had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong even when he was clearly doing wrong. The front door was unlocked, as it usually was. I walked in calling out, "Mom, anyone home?" But my voice sounded muffled and distant thanks to the migraine pounding in my skull. The house was silent except for sounds coming from upstairs, from the bedrooms. At first, my migraine-addled brain processed it as someone moving furniture or maybe my mom vacuuming. But then I heard a sound that made my stomach clench with a dread I couldn't yet name. A moan. Female. Familiar. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for what felt like an eternity but was probably only seconds, my brain refusing to process what my ears were telling me. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe it was the TV. Maybe my mom was watching something inappropriate, which would be weird, but preferable to the alternative my subconscious was already screaming at me. I climbed those stairs, the same ones I'd run up thousands of times as a kid. The ones where I'd sat and talked on the phone with Maya for hours when we first started dating. The ones where my mom took pictures of me and Derek in our matching Christmas pajamas every year until we were teenagers and refused. Each step felt like walking through concrete. My migraine was forgotten, replaced by a different kind of pain, anticipatory, nauseating, the feeling you get right before a car crash when time seems to slow down and you can see the impact coming, but can't stop it. The sounds were coming from my old bedroom. The door was closed but not latched. I could see a slice of the room through the gap, my old Seahawks poster still on the walls, my high school football trophy still on the shelf, the twin bed with the blue plaid comforter my mom had bought me sophomore year. I pushed the door open. Maya was on top of my brother Derek in my old twin bed, her back arched, her hair with my pencils still stuck through the bun falling loose around her shoulders. His hands were gripping her waist, his eyes closed, his face twisted in an expression that made me want to vomit. They froze mid-motion when the door creaked. I froze in the doorway. For what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds, we all just stared at each other. Three people caught in a tableau of betrayal so surreal, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were transmitting. Maya's face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, horror, guilt, fear. She scrambled off of Derek, grabbing at the comforter to cover herself, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but no sounds coming out. Derek didn't look guilty, he looked annoyed, inconvenienced. Like I'd interrupted something mundane like him watching TV, not destroying my entire life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to demand explanations, to ask how long, to ask why, to ask how they could do this to me. But I didn't. I couldn't. My body felt like it belonged to someone else, like I was watching this scene from outside myself, from a distance, through glass. I simply turned around, walked down those stairs carefully, one at a time, my hand on the railing because my legs felt like they might give out, got in my car, and drove. I don't remember the drive home. I don't remember getting on the highway or navigating traffic or parking in my apartment building's garage. I just remember suddenly being inside the apartment I shared with Maya, sitting on our couch, staring at the wall. Our apartment. Our couch. Our life. Everything was ours, and it was all built on lies. I sat there for hours, not moving, barely breathing, just staring. Processing. Or trying to process. Failing to process. Failing to process. Maya came home around 6. I heard her key in the lock, heard her footsteps, heard her voice calling my name, tentative, scared, already knowing what was coming. She came into the living room with tears already streaming down her face and apologies already forming on her lips. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, like she'd already started to disappear from my life. "Baby, please, I can explain. We're done," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, dead, like all the emotion had been scooped out and what was left was just words. "Please, just let me explain. It's not what you... It's exactly what I think. Get your things and leave. Tonight." She crumpled onto the floor, sobbing, gasping for air between words. "It just happened. I never meant for it to happen. It doesn't mean anything. I love you, I only love you. He doesn't mean anything to me." Every word was like a knife. She loved me, but had been fucking my brother for 3 years. It didn't mean anything, but she'd done it hundreds of times. It just happened, but it kept happening. Over and over, in my childhood bedroom, probably in our bed, probably in places I didn't even want to imagine. "I don't care," I said, and I meant it. I didn't care about her reasons or her excuses or her justifications. Nothing she could say would make this okay. Nothing she could say would undo what I'd seen, what I now knew, what I'd have to live with forever. She begged. She pleaded. She tried to grab my hands and I pulled away like she was made of poison. She promised she'd end it with Derek, like that was the issue, like the problem was that it was ongoing rather than that it had happened at all. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, she gave up. She went into our bedroom. I stayed on the couch, couldn't bear to follow her in there, couldn't bear to watch her pack, couldn't bear to be in the same room with her, and emerged with a duffel bag of essentials. "Where will you go?" I asked. Not because I cared, but because it seemed like something I should ask. "My sister's," she whispered. "Can we talk tomorrow? When you've had time to?" "No." "Get your stuff out this week. Leave your key. Don't contact me." She left. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. I sat on that couch all night, watching the sun go down and then come back up. Not sleeping, not eating, not moving, just existing in the wreckage of my life. The aftermath begins. I didn't go to work the next day, or the day after that. I called in sick, which was technically true. I felt sick to my stomach, sick in my soul, sick in ways that no medicine could fix. My phone rang constantly. Maya, Derek, my mom, my dad. I didn't answer. I couldn't. What would I even say? On the third day, there was pounding on my door. Loud, insistent, accompanied by my mother's voice. "Honey, open the door. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about this." Like this was a disagreement about Thanksgiving plans or which restaurant to go to for dinner. Not the complete destruction of my ability to trust anyone ever again. I opened the door because I knew they wouldn't leave otherwise. My parents stood there looking tired and annoyed, not ashamed, not apologetic, not horrified by what had happened to their son, just annoyed. They came in without asking permission, sat on my couch like they owned it, and looked at me with expressions I'd seen 1,000 times growing up. The expressions that meant I was being unreasonable and they were about to explain why. "You need to call your brother," my father said. No greeting. No "how are you holding up?" Just a demand. I laughed. It sounded unhinged even to my own ears. "You're joking." "He's devastated," my mother added. "He's locked himself in his room. He won't eat. He won't talk to us. You need to forgive him so we can move past this." Move past this. Move past 30 years of systematic betrayal. Move past watching them together in my childhood bedroom. Move past every family dinner where they all lied to my face. "You need to forgive Derek," my father continued, his voice taking on that stern, paternal tone he used when he expected to be obeyed. "This family can't function with this kind of drama." Drama. He called it drama. The word hit me like a physical blow. Drama was arguing over who got the last piece of pie. Drama was disagreeing about politics. Drama was not your brother fucking your girlfriend for 3 years while your entire family covered it up. "Maya made a mistake, honey," my mother said, her voice softer but somehow even more infuriating. "We all make mistakes. Derek feels terrible about it. You're hurting everyone by refusing to talk to him. This is tearing the family apart." I was hurting everyone. I was tearing the family apart, not Derek, who'd betrayed me, not Maya, who'd lied to me for 3 years, not them, who'd known and said nothing. Me. For having the audacity to be hurt. I felt something cold and heavy settle in my chest, a realization crystallizing into certainty, sharp and clear as broken glass. "Did you know?" I asked. My voice sounded strange again, but different this time. Not flat. Dangerous. The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched between us like a chasm. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at his hands. "Did you?" "No," I repeated, biting off each word. Finally, my mother looked away from me, couldn't even meet my eyes, and admitted, "I caught them together last week, in Derek's room." I was coming home from the grocery store and heard noises and thought maybe he had a girl over, which would have been nice. You know, he's been so down since losing his job, and I just wanted to check if they wanted lunch. She trailed off, took a breath, continued. "Derek begged me not to say anything. He was crying, really crying. You know how he gets. He promised me he was going to end it with Maya. He promised he was going to tell you himself. He just needed a little more time to figure out how. I was just giving him time to do the right thing." She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was explaining why she'd forgotten to mention a dentist appointment or hadn't bought milk at the store. Just a little oversight. Just giving Derek time to do the right thing. The right thing. After 3 years, he needed more time to figure out how to do the right thing. Last week, I said slowly. You knew last week. Well, yes, but... And you said nothing. You saw them together and you said nothing. You chose to protect him instead of telling me. I didn't choose anyone. I was trying to. You chose him, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. You actively, consciously chose to protect him and let me keep living a lie. You chose him. On purpose. That's not fair. I was trying to give him a chance to get out. I roared, and even I was surprised by the volume, by the rage that came pouring out like lava from a volcano I hadn't known was building inside me. Get out of my house right now! They stood looking shocked. Like I was the one being unreasonable. Like I was the one causing problems. Honey, you're upset, but if you just calm down and if you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police and having you removed, I said, my voice dropping back to that dangerous calm. And then I'm changing my number and you'll never hear from me again. Your choice. 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3. They left. I locked the door behind them, slid down to the floor with my back against it, and finally cried. Great, heaving sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside out. I cried for the 8 years I'd wasted. I cried for the future I'd imagined that would never exist. I cried for the family I'd thought I had, but apparently never did. And then I stopped crying, stood up, and started making plans. That night, I changed my phone number. I blocked my family on every platform: Facebook, Instagram, email, everything. I contacted a real estate agent about breaking my lease. I updated my resume. I started looking for jobs in other cities, anywhere but Seattle, anywhere I wouldn't risk running into them. That was the moment I understood something fundamental about my family. They weren't just flawed or thoughtless or making mistakes. They were emotionally broken people who viewed relationships as transactions designed to maintain their own comfort, not as bonds between human beings who owed each other basic dignity, honesty, and loyalty. Derek had always been the golden child, the achiever, the favorite. When he made varsity football as a sophomore, and I didn't make it until junior year, my parents threw a party for him and barely acknowledged my achievement. When he got into Washington State, and I got into UW, which was actually harder, they acted like his acceptance was more impressive. When he got his construction supervisor job, they bragged about him constantly. When I got my position at the architecture firm, they said, "That's nice, honey," and changed the subject. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn the same level of love and pride they gave Derek automatically. I'd been the good son, responsible, stable, never causing problems. I'd thought that mattered. I'd thought they loved me, just maybe in a quieter way. But I'd been wrong. They didn't love me less than Derek. They didn't love me at all. I was just a supporting character in Derek's story, a prop to maintain family equilibrium. And when choosing between Derek's comfort and my devastation, they didn't even hesitate. That realization should have hurt more than it did. But I think I'd already known it somewhere deep down. I'd just been too scared to look at it directly. Rebuilding. I left Seattle 2 months later. Broke my lease, paid the penalty, didn't care. I'd gotten a job offer from a firm in Portland smaller than my Seattle firm. But good work, good people, good money. Far enough away that I wouldn't constantly worry about running into someone from my old life. I found a small apartment in the Pearl District, a 1-bedroom with exposed brick and tall windows that let in good light. I bought new furniture, nothing from the apartment I'd shared with Maya. I wanted no reminders, no ghosts. The first year was hard. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office, took on extra projects, anything to keep my mind occupied. I went to therapy, which helped more than I'd expected. My therapist, Dr. Chen, was this tiny Korean woman in her 60s who didn't let me wallow in self-pity, but also didn't push me to forgive and move on, like so many people seem to think I should. You don't owe anyone forgiveness, she told me in one of our early sessions. Forgiveness is something you give freely if and when you're ready, not something you owe as payment for someone else's guilt. Your job right now is just to heal. So I healed, slowly, painfully, but steadily. I made new friends, people from work, people from a running club I joined, people from a volunteer literacy program I started attending on weekends, people who didn't know me as the guy whose brother slept with his girlfriend, people who just knew me as Ryan, the architect who made terrible puns and always brought good coffee to morning meetings. I dated, eventually. Nothing serious at first. I wasn't ready for serious. But it felt good to remember that women existed who didn't lie to me, who didn't cheat on me, who treated me like I mattered. And then, about 3 years after I moved to Portland, I met Chloe. It was at a volunteer event for the literacy program. We were organizing a book drive, hauling boxes of donated books into a storage unit, and I'd made some stupid joke about how heavy the Harry Potter boxes were. She'd laughed, actually laughed, not the polite fake laugh people do when jokes aren't funny, and said something clever back that I can't even remember now, just that it made me laugh too. She had kind eyes. That was the first thing I noticed. Kind eyes and a sharp laugh and zero connection to my past, my family, my pain. She was just Chloe, a social worker who ran literacy programs and loved Thai food, and could quote obscure movies and wore her dark curls pulled back in a messy ponytail that somehow looked elegant. We got coffee after the book drive, then dinner the next week, then a movie. Then suddenly we were dating and I realized with something like wonder that I was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not just not miserable, not just okay, but happy. I took it slow. Too slow, probably. Chloe later told me she thought I wasn't that interested because I was so cautious. But I couldn't help it. I needed to be sure. I needed to trust. We dated for 2 years before I told her the whole story. We were camping in the Columbia River Gorge, ironically, the same kind of trip I'd planned to propose to Maya 8 years earlier, and sitting by the campfire after dinner. And she asked me why I never talked about my family. So I told her everything. The affair, the betrayal, my family's choice, how I'd left and never looked back. She didn't pity me. She didn't try to convince me to reconcile. She didn't suggest that blood was thicker than water or that I should forgive for my own sake or any of the other platitudes people love to spout about family. She just reached across the firelight, took my hand, and said, "Your healing is your own. I'm just glad you're here now." I knew then that I was going to marry her. We got engaged 6 months later. A better proposal, better ring, better everything. We got married in a small ceremony at the Japanese garden in Portland. Just close friends and Chloe's family, who welcomed me like I'd always been one of them. Chloe's parents, Maria and Tom, treated me with more genuine warmth and acceptance in 6 months than my own parents had in 26 years. They asked about my work and actually listened to the answers. They remembered my birthday. They told me they were glad Chloe had found me. They made me feel like I belonged. That's when I finally understood what real family was supposed to feel like. Chloe and I bought a small house in Northeast Portland, a craftsman with a yard and a porch and enough space for an office where I could work from home. We adopted a dog, a mutt named Biscuit, who Chloe found at the shelter and fell in love with immediately. And then, 3 years into our marriage, Emma was born. I cried when I held her for the first time. Cried with joy, yes, but also with grief for the family I'd thought I'd have, the grandparents I'd imagined for my children, the life I'd planned that had never materialized. But mostly with joy, with overwhelming, terrifying, wonderful joy. Emma had Chloe's dark curls and my stubborn chin and the most perfect tiny fingers I'd ever seen. She was everything. She was proof that I could build something good from the ashes of what had been destroyed. I was happy, genuinely, peacefully happy. I had a wife who loved me, a daughter who depended on me, work that fulfilled me, friends who valued me. I'd built a life for real life, a good life without any help from the people who were supposed to help me build it. I'd almost forgotten they existed. The chance encounter. Emma was 2 years old when it happened. A Saturday morning in September, unseasonably warm, the kind of late summer day that makes Portland feel almost tropical. Chloe was at a yoga class and I'd taken Emma to do the grocery shopping, a weekly ritual we both enjoyed. She sat in the cart and pointed at things and practiced her words. Apple, banana, cookie, always cookie. Every time we passed the bakery section, We were in the produce section, and I was trying to pick out avocados that were actually ripe when someone said my name. Not Ryan, my full name. Ryan Michael Peterson. Only a few people in the world use my full name. And most of them were people I never wanted to hear from again. I turned slowly, already knowing what I'd see but hoping I was wrong. My parents stood there by the organic kale, looking at me like they'd seen a ghost, which I suppose, from their perspective, they had. They looked awful, truly awful. My father, who'd always been robust and barrel-chested, looked diminished somehow, like he'd shrunk. His face was drawn and gray, his clothes hanging loose on a frame that had lost maybe 40 pounds. My mother had lost weight too, but in an unhealthy way that made her look gaunt rather than slim. Her hair was thinner than I remembered, shot through with gray. She'd always dyed, but apparently didn't anymore. But it was their eyes that really got me. Haunted. Hollow. The eyes of people who'd been through something terrible and come out the other side changed. Emma, oblivious to the tension, waved at them. "Hi!" she chirped, because she was 2 and thought everyone was a potential friend. My mother's face crumpled. She started crying right there next to the organic kale, her hand going to her mouth like she was trying to hold back a sound. "Ryan," my father said, his voice rough and thick. "Please, please, we just need to talk." Every instinct screamed at me to grab Emma and run, to protect her from these people who'd proven they couldn't be trusted, to maintain the boundaries I'd built so carefully over 8 years. But another part of me, maybe the part that had been in therapy, maybe the part that had softened with fatherhood, maybe just the part that was genuinely curious what 8 years of consequences looked like, hesitated. "Not here," I said quietly, glancing at Emma, who was starting to sense that something was wrong. "There's a coffee shop across the parking lot. 30 minutes. Just you two, nobody else." They nodded eagerly, desperately. My mother kept crying. I finished my shopping on autopilot, my hands shaking slightly as I bagged the avocados, paid, loaded Emma and the groceries into the car. I called Chloe. "They're here," I said when she answered. "My parents." I ran into them at the store. I told them I'd meet them for coffee. Silence on the other end. "Then, do you want me to come?" "No. Maybe. I don't know. I just wanted you to know in case I don't know." "In case, I'll come," she decided. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't go in without me." She made it in 12, pulled up next to my car where I was sitting with Emma, who was happily demolishing a banana in her car seat. Chloe got in the passenger seat and took my hand. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know. You don't owe them anything. I know. But you're curious." I laughed weakly. "Yeah, I'm curious." We got Emma out of the car seat. She came with us because I didn't trust leaving her anywhere near my parents unsupervised, and walked into the coffee shop. My parents were already there, sitting at a corner table, both holding cups of coffee they didn't seem to be drinking. They stood when we approached. My mother started crying again immediately. "This is Chloe," I said, my arm around my wife's waist. "My wife. And this is Emma, my daughter. Your granddaughter, I suppose, though she doesn't know you." My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. My father just stared at Emma like she was a miracle, which I suppose to them she was proof that I'd survived, that I'd built a life, that their choices hadn't completely destroyed me. We sat. Emma climbed into Chloe's lap and regarded my parents with the solemn curiosity of a toddler. "Talk," I said. "You have 30 minutes." And they talked. They told me that Maya had killed herself 2 years after I left Seattle. Hung herself in the apartment she'd moved into after her sister kicked her out. Apparently, she'd spiraled after I left, drinking, depression, couldn't hold down a job. Her sister found her. They only knew because they were still listed as emergency contacts in her phone, a detail that made me feel nauseous. They told me Derek had disappeared, that he'd shown up drunk at their house about 6 months after the incident, blamed them for ruining his life by not forcing me to forgive him, said terrible things, and then left. They hadn't heard from him in over 7 years. Didn't know if he was alive or dead. Had filed a missing persons report, but nothing came of it. They told me how their friends had gradually stopped calling, how word had gotten out about what happened. Small town, people talking. Suddenly, they were the parents who'd enabled their son's affair with their other son's girlfriend. How they'd been quietly uninvited from book clubs and poker nights and barbecues. They told me about the loneliness, The isolation, how they'd driven away everyone who mattered, and were left with just each other in that big empty house where Derek's room stayed unchanged, like a shrine, and my room stayed empty like a grave. "We were wrong," my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We failed you. We chose wrong. We know that now." My father nodded, his jaw working like he was trying not to cry. "We want a chance to know our granddaughter, to be in your life. We know we don't deserve it, but we're asking anyway." I looked at them broken, desperate, aged beyond their years by the consequences of their choices, and I felt not forgiveness exactly. Not yet, maybe not ever. But not hatred either. Just a kind of sad understanding that they were human, flawed, capable of terrible choices, and also capable of recognizing those choices. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make right now." Of course," my mother said quickly. "Whatever you need, we'll wait, however long it takes." I gave them my new phone number, the first time they'd had it in 8 years. Told them I'd call when I was ready to talk more. We left. Got in the car. Emma waved goodbye to them through the window, still oblivious. "What are you thinking?" Chloe asked as we drove home. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that maybe people can change, that maybe 8 years of consequences taught them something, that maybe Emma deserves grandparents, even flawed ones. And I'm thinking," I continued, "that I might be an idiot for even considering it." Chloe squeezed my hand. "You're not an idiot. You're just someone who wants to believe people can be better. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as I protect Emma," I said. "As long as I don't let them hurt her the way they hurt me." "Well, protect her," Chloe corrected. You're not alone in this." The mistake, I called them a week later, arranged supervised visits, parks, restaurants, always public, always with Chloe present. I made rules. No discussing Derek or Maya. No guilt trips about the past. No expectations of instant family bonding. Just slow, careful getting to know you conversations. They agreed to everything. They showed up when they said they would. They brought age-appropriate toys for Emma. They asked about my work and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. They complimented Chloe's job and her family. They were trying. For 3 months it was manageable. Not good, not comfortable, but manageable. Strained but civil. Like distant acquaintances learning to be friends rather than parents and son reconnecting. Emma liked them, which made it easier. She called them Papa Paul and Grandma Joyce without the weight of history we all carried. To her, they were just these older people who gave her juice boxes and pushed her on swings. My mother seemed especially transformed, softer, more present. She listened when I talked instead of waiting for her turn to speak. She asked follow-up questions. She seemed genuinely interested in my life for the first time I could remember. My father was quieter, more careful, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing and shattering this fragile peace we'd built. But he tried. He showed up. He didn't defend Derek or make excuses. I started to think maybe this could work. Maybe they really had changed. Maybe consequences really had taught them something about the value of honesty and loyalty and treating people with basic human decency. I should have known better. They invited us to dinner at their house. Thanksgiving was coming up, and they wanted to make it a real family holiday for Emma's first Thanksgiving she'd actually remember. Chloe was skeptical. "Are you sure?" she asked when I told her. "Being in their home feels different than meeting in public." "I know," I said. "But they've been trying so hard, and Emma keeps asking why we can't go to their house like we go to your parents' house." "I think it might be okay. Just promise me," Chloe said seriously, "that if anything feels off, we leave immediately. No debate, no discussion. We just go." "I promise." I should have listened to Chloe's instincts. She's smarter than me about people. We went to their house on a Sunday in late November. The house looked the same from the outside, same beige siding, same blue trim, same maple tree in the front yard where Derek and I used to climb. But something felt different as we walked up the path. Off. Wrong. My mother answered the door with a smile that seemed too bright, too forced. My father hovered behind her, looking nervous. Come in," my mother said, ushering us inside. The house was cleaner than I'd ever seen it, like she'd spent days scrubbing. but it smelled wrong, too much air freshener, like she was trying to cover up something. Emma ran ahead into the living room, excited to explore. Chloe followed her, always keeping her in sight. We made it through appetizers. Through small talk about the weather and Emma's daycare and my latest project at work. My parents were trying too hard, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, asking questions with a desperate edge. We sat down for dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, my mother's standard company meal. I was halfway through explaining a complicated zoning issue with my current project when my father cleared his throat in that way. That meant he had something important to say. Here it comes, I thought. And I was right. We need to talk to you about Derek, he said. The chicken turned to ash in my mouth. Chloe's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. No, I said flatly. That's not a topic we're discussing. Just hear us out, my mother pleaded. Please, just listen. No, I repeated. I told you. He's homeless, she blurted out. Your brother. He's been homeless for the past year, living on the streets in Seattle. He has a drug problem. He's sick. He reached out to us last month and he needs help. The room went very quiet. Even Emma, who'd been chattering happily, seemed to sense the tension and went still. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice dangerous and low. Because he's your brother, my father said. Like that explained everything. Like that word brother should override betrayal and lies and destruction. He needs financial support. My mother continued quickly, like she had to get all the words out before I could stop her. Just until he gets on his feet. We can't afford it, not with Dad's medical bills and my prescriptions. But you're doing well. You have a good job. You could help. No, I said flatly. You didn't even let me finish. No, I repeated, louder. The answer is no. To any version of this question, no. My father's face reddened, a familiar sight from my childhood when things didn't go his way. He's family. He made a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. I cut him off, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Chloe was already standing, already getting Emma out of her high chair. He didn't trip and fall into bed with my girlfriend. He systematically betrayed me for 3 years, with Maya. In your house. In my childhood bedroom. And you all covered it up. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Multiple choices. Hundreds of choices made every single day for 3 years. It's been 8 years, my mother said, her voice taking on that martyred quality I remembered from childhood, the tone that meant I was being unreasonable and she was the victim. When are you going to let it go? When are you going to stop punishing everyone for something that happened almost a decade ago? Something inside me snapped, not into rage. I'd moved past rage years ago, into clarity. Crystal clear, diamond-hard clarity. I'm not punishing anyone, I said, standing up. Chloe was by the door with Emma ready to go, just like she'd promised. I'm protecting myself and my family from people who've proven they can't be trusted. This, I gestured at the dinner table, the cleaned house, the 3 months of supervised visits, was a mistake. My mistake. I thought maybe you changed, but you haven't. You're still the same people who chose Derek over me, who chose his comfort over my devastation, who thought my pain was an inconvenience rather than a wound. So you're just gonna let him die on the streets? My mother asked, tears streaming down her face now. You're just going to abandon your own brother? He abandoned me first, I said. 8 years ago, in the bed where I slept as a child, and you helped him do it. You're heartless, my father spat, standing now too, his face purple with rage. Cold. Cruel. We raised you better than this. The laugh that came out of me was harsh and bitter. You didn't raise me at all. You tolerated me while you focused on Derek, and the only thing you taught me was how much damage parents can do when they play favorites. My mother stood, leaning on the table like she might collapse. If you walk out that door, we have nothing left. Derek's gone. You'd be gone. We'd have no one. You should have thought about that, I said quietly, before you asked me to save the person who destroyed me. I walked to the door. Chloe and Emma were already there, Emma wide-eyed and scared by all the raised voices. Wait, my father called. You can't just. I turned back, looked at both of them. saw them clearly for the first time in 3 months. Not as changed people, not as parents trying to make amends, but as desperate people willing to say anything, do anything, be anyone if it meant they wouldn't have to face the consequences of their choices alone. If you bring this up again, I said quietly but firmly, you will never see your granddaughter again. Not at parks, not at restaurants, not ever. Do you understand me? The room went completely silent. My mother's crying stopped. My father's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Do you understand? I repeated. They both nodded. Good, I said. And I walked out. We didn't speak on the drive home. Emma fell asleep in her car seat, exhausted by the emotional chaos she didn't understand. Chloe drove while I stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. When we got home, after we put Emma to bed, Chloe and I sat on our couch, our real couch in our real home, built by us without them. And she held me while I cried. Not for them, for the family I'd thought I might get back. For the hope I'd allowed myself to feel. For the stupidity of believing people changed just because they said they had. I'm sorry, I said into her shoulder. I should have listened to you. You wanted to believe in second chances, she said softly. There's nothing wrong with that. And now you know for sure. You gave them a chance, and they wasted it. You don't have to wonder anymore. She was right. I'd given them 3 months, multiple chances to prove they'd changed. And at the first opportunity, they'd revealed they were the same people they'd always been willing to sacrifice my peace for Derek's convenience. I was done wondering. Done hoping. Done. The final chapter. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd drawn my boundary, enforced my consequence, moved on. But life, as I'd learned, doesn't care about our sense of narrative closure. 4 months after that disastrous dinner, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. Spam calls were constant, but something made me pick up. It was a nurse from Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. My father had been in a catastrophic car accident. A drunk driver had T-boned him in an intersection downtown. He'd survived, but both of his legs had been crushed beyond repair. They'd had to amputate below the knee. Both legs. They'd listed me as next of kin and wanted to know if I'd be coming to the hospital. I said I'd think about it and hung up. I didn't go. Chloe offered to come with me if I wanted to go, but I didn't want to. I sent flowers to the hospital with a card that just said, "Wishing you a smooth recovery. Ryan." 2 months after that, my mother called from her own number. I'd never blocked it because I wanted to know if they tried to contact me. She had cancer. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, the kind where the words treatment and palliative care get used in the same sentence. The kind where survival rates are measured in months, not years. She wanted to see me. Wanted to make things right before she died. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't go. 1 month after that, I learned from a distant cousin who found me on LinkedIn that my aunt and uncle, my father's sister, and her husband, who'd also known about the affair and said nothing, had both become seriously ill with COVID complications. Both hospitalized. Both on ventilators. Their entire support system collapsed, like a house of cards built on sand. And suddenly, when they had nothing left, when they were facing their own mortality and isolation and consequences, when they finally understood what it felt like to be abandoned by everyone who was supposed to care, they understood. My mother showed up at my office. I still don't know how she found out where I worked. Maybe the same cousin who'd contacted me. Maybe she hired someone to find me. She looked like a ghost. She'd lost most of her hair to chemo, wore a wig that didn't quite match her natural color. Her skin was yellowed with jaundice, her body so thin, her clothes hung off her like she was a child playing dress-up in adult clothing. My father was with her, in a wheelchair. He looked even worse than she did, gaunt and gray and aged 20 years and 6 months. The receptionist called me, nervous. "There are some people here to see you? They say they're your parents? Should I call security?" "No," I said. "It's okay. I'll come down." I don't know why I agreed to see them. Morbid curiosity, maybe. Or maybe just the knowledge that this was probably the last time I'd see them alive. They were in the lobby, looking small and scared and out of place in the modern office building with its glass walls and sleek furniture. "There's a conference room we can use," I said. not bothering with the greeting. I led them to a small conference room, helped my father maneuver his wheelchair through the door, sat down across from them at the table and waited. They cried, real tears this time, not the manipulative tears of people seeking relief from inconvenience. Tears that came from somewhere deep and genuine, the kind of crying that makes your whole body shake. They apologized. For everything. For protecting Derek. For asking me to sacrifice my peace for his comfort. For using those 3 months to try to manipulate me rather than genuinely make amends. We were wrong, my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper, hoarse from crying and sickness. We failed you. We chose wrong. We kept choosing wrong. We chose Derek over you again and again, and we can't undo it. But we need you to know that we understand now. We understand what we did. My father nodded, his jaw working like he was trying not to cry harder. We lost Derek. We don't even know if he's alive. And we lost you. And we lost each other in a lot of ways. And we're dying, both of us, really. Even if I'm just doing it slower and we're alone because everyone we ever cared about either left or died or stopped calling because they couldn't stand who we'd become. We know we don't deserve forgiveness, my mother continued. We know we've used up all our chances, but we need you to know that we understand now. We know what we did to you. We know why you left. We know why you can't trust us, and we're sorry. We're so sorry. They wanted forgiveness, not for relief this time. Or at least, not only for relief, they genuinely seemed to grasp, finally, after 8 years and countless consequences, what they'd done. They wanted a second chance to know Emma. To be grandparents. To die knowing they'd made some kind of amends. I looked at them, broken, desperate, scared, finally comprehending the weight of their choices, and I felt nothing, not anger, not satisfaction, not grief, not vindication, not even pity, just nothing. An empty space where family used to be. Because here's what they still couldn't understand, what they'd perhaps never understand. I had already grieved them 8 years ago. I'd gone through all the stages of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I'd cried and raged and rebuilt. I'd done the therapy and the journaling and the hard work of becoming whole again without them. They were mourning the loss of their son now, facing it for the first time as death approached. But I'd mourned the loss of my parents 8 years ago, when they chose betrayal over honesty, Derek over me, comfort over integrity. They weren't losing their son because they were dying. They lost him when they chose betrayal. I'm sorry you're sick, I said finally, my voice even and calm. I'm sorry you're in pain. I'm sorry you're alone. I genuinely mean that. I don't wish suffering on you. Hope flared in their eyes. But that pain, that loneliness, those are consequences of choices you made long before you got sick. You didn't fail me because you couldn't help Derek. You failed me 8 years ago when you protected him instead of me. When you asked me to swallow my devastation for your convenience. When you showed me that my pain mattered less than your comfort. The hope died. I can't give you what you're asking for, I continued. Not because I'm cruel or heartless or holding a grudge, but because you already killed any relationship we might have had. 8 years ago. And you can't resurrect it now just because you finally understand what you buried. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. My father just stared at his hands in his lap. I hope you find peace, I said, standing up. I genuinely do. I hope you have people who can be with you at the end. I hope you don't die alone and scared. But those people won't be me. That peace won't be found with me. Please, my mother whispered, please don't do this. We're dying. We're your parents. Please, you stopped being my parents when you chose him over me, I said quietly. I'm just acknowledging what you decided 8 years ago. I walked to the door, turned back one last time. Goodbye, I said, and I meant it. I walked out of that conference room, back to my office, back to my work, back to my life. The life I'd built without them. The life I'd continue building without them. That evening, I went home to Chloe and Emma. We had dinner tacos, Emma's favorite, with too much cheese and not enough vegetables. We gave her a bath and read her bedtime stories. I tucked her in and kissed her forehead and told her I loved her. And then I sat on the couch with my wife and told her what happened. How do you feel? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. I thought I'd feel something, satisfaction or guilt or something, but I just feel nothing. They're just strangers to me now. Sad strangers who made terrible choices, but strangers. That's okay, Chloe said. You're allowed to feel nothing. You don't owe them your emotions any more than you owe them forgiveness. Do you think I'm wrong? I asked. For not giving them what they wanted. They're dying. I think, Chloe said carefully, that you're protecting yourself and your family from people who've proven repeatedly that they can't be trusted. And I think that's exactly what you should be doing. But they're dying. People die every day, Chloe said. That doesn't obligate us to sacrifice our peace for their comfort, especially when those people spent years sacrificing our peace for their own comfort. She was right. I knew she was right. My mother died 3 months later. I found out from an obituary I saw online while searching for something else entirely. There was a small service, poorly attended. I sent flowers but didn't go. My father died a year after that. Heart attack. Probably for the best I. Don't think he wanted to live without my mother. Not in a wheelchair. Not alone in that big empty house full of ghosts. My aunt recovered. My uncle didn't. I didn't go to his funeral either. Derek, as far as I know, is still missing. Or dead. I don't know, and I don't particularly care. 8 years later. Present day, I'm 34 years old now. Sitting in my home office watching rain streak down the window while Emma, who's 2 but seems older, seems wise beyond her years, plays with blocks in the next room. I think about my family sometimes. Not often, not obsessively, but sometimes. I wonder if things could have been different. If they made different choices. If I'd been Derek, the golden child, would they have protected me the same way? But mostly I don't think about them at all, because my real family is here. Chloe, humming off-key in the kitchen while she makes lunch. Emma, stacking blocks into precarious towers and laughing when they fall. Biscuit, our dog, sleeping in a patch of weak winter sunlight. Chloe's parents, Maria and Tom, who treat Emma like the miracle she is and treat me like the son they always wanted. My friends from work, from the running club, from the volunteer program. The family I chose instead of the family I was born into. That's the thing I've learned. Family isn't about blood or obligation or guilt. It's about loyalty and integrity and love. It's about people who show up for you, not just when it's convenient but when it's hard. It's about people who protect you instead of asking you to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. My parents weren't family. They were just people I happened to be related to who made consistently terrible choices and expected me to live with the consequences. So, was I wrong for treating my family like this after what they did? People ask me that sometimes when the story comes up, usually at dinner parties or late-night conversations with new friends who don't know my history. They hear the basic outline: brother slept with girlfriend, family knew I cut them off, and they ask, but don't you think you should forgive them? They're your family. And I tell them what I've learned. Family is something you build through consistent actions over time. It's not something you're automatically granted through DNA. My parents had 26 years to build a real family relationship with me, and they chose not to. They had 8 years after their betrayal to genuinely change, and they chose not to. I didn't cut off my family. I simply acknowledged that they'd cut me off years earlier, and I stopped pretending otherwise. I was wrong only once in this entire story, and that was believing they were a real family in the first place. Real families don't ask you to sacrifice your dignity for someone else's convenience. Real families don't protect your betrayer and punish you for being hurt. Real families don't wait until they're dying to care about the damage they've done. Real families show up. They tell the truth. They protect you. They choose you. And if they don't do those things, they're not family. They're just people you happen to know. I have a real family now. I built it myself, from scratch, with people who earn their place in my life through actions rather than demanding it through biology. And I've never been happier.